Holla ballers! What's going on? It's Preacher! And as you've seen, if you checked in with our stream, I'm playing all the classes in the world. And they're all pretty much done. There's only 2 remaining for their raid runs. We've got them all set up. We've all got them like 890-ish. Not amazing, but more than enough for the average casual player to pick up and play and get to a decent item level, especially when the tomb launches in just a week or so, baby. We're getting our new raid, we're getting our new loots, and we'll be diving deep into there. So obviously with me playing so many different specs and classes and the knowledge that the guides are coming, the big questions are being asked. 1, when are the guides coming? And 2, what's your favourite? Like, now you're playing them all again, because I hadn't done this since the alpha, pretty much. And now it's time to start giving some results. Well, it looks like this. Like, the first question is like, what are we playing when Tomb comes out? Like, the raiders are like, what are we going to be playing? And even the casual players are like, what's going to be the best? Interestingly enough, I've spent the last few hours over the last, I did this last week and I've done it again today, browsing through all the comments, all the discords and all that kind of stuff, just looking at where we're sitting with a number of classes, especially the kind of guides I'm going to be hitting first, which will be the most popular ones. And we still don't really know, which is a weird position to be in. Is like, what is exactly going to be the best? And that's because, one, still subject to change, right? Blizzard could still change some stuff. It's unlikely at this point they're going to change some stuff, but maybe. So that's always got to be there. Like, with Frostmage, it's like, are we going to be playing Glacial Spike, or is it going to be slightly better? I'm like, maybe, kind of. Looks to be going a little bit higher, depends on the encounters, and all these questions get asked. So in terms of what is going to be the absolute best spec, best talent setup, best whatever, that's going to be figured out pretty much in the first 6 to 7 days after the tomb launches, when people actually get in there, start throwing their classes against the abilities of the bosses and looking at how the new gear sets work out. What are the real, how much are we actually seeing the proc rates? How much are we actually getting out of this? And from there, we're definitely going to be able to start piecing together what to play. But imagine that first 7 days is a trial period. So for those of you who are desperate to play the best you can, understand that when normal and heroic launches, which is before mythic, that's the period of test. It's a test for everybody, because not only are you learning the bosses, you're also learning how your spec and class works with those bosses, right? You're doing all those things, as is everybody in the world when those bosses launch. So there's a couple of things happening there that should alleviate any pressure you feel to play the absolute best you possibly can. Normal and Heroic week is test week more than anything, to give everything to the mass players, give everything to the player base, start figuring it out, and you're going to be learning bosses as well as your classes at the same time. So don't worry about it is the message I'm sending out there. Play whatever you're comfortable with, try out some new things if you want to, but use that entire week to figure stuff out, see what other people are doing, browsing through some logs, who did the best, what were they playing, maybe I can do that, maybe I don't have the legendaries for it yet, maybe I don't have the gear for that yet, maybe I should work towards that, and I will obviously do a video kind of summarizing all that as much as possible. In terms of when the guides are coming, as you can probably figure out from what I just said, it's going to be when the tomb's out, right? When the tomb's out and we can finally lock some stuff in place, that's when the guides are going to start pouring out as fast as we can humanly do them here in the office. We'll get as many done as possible. But what I'm happy to confirm is that all the specs are geared and done. We are ready to go with all the classes. So that bit's done. Now we just need to wait and see exactly the information I'm going to be putting out there to hopefully not lead any of you astray. I would imagine there might be a couple that will do. This always tends to happen where they need updating because something will change over the next couple of weeks, or Blizzard rocks in with some ridiculous sweeping class changes. Who knows? We could launch with Tomb and suddenly Feral Druids are just leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. That could happen. It's probably not, but it's stuff like that can happen, and then there's very swift and abrupt changes by Blizzard to bring them back in line. So that's something we'll watch out for as well. We just don't want to get ahead of ourselves and leave you guys with misinformation, and then you're like, fuck Preach, fucking arsehole, told me to play this and it's totally fucking wrong, you dickhead.
Fuck Preach!
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, don't you?
Every day!
Every day. So I'm trying to definitely avoid that issue. In terms of what are my favorites, it's been interesting. Like, replaying them since alpha, there's been quite a lot of changes since early alpha, but the most important thing that has changed over the course of Legion is gear. And it's become more and more apparent the more specs we've played and tested, and I'm by no means finished learning and re-teaching myself each of the specs. is how much gear has played a role in how the specs play. So some of them actually don't even seem to flat out work until you get a lot of gear. And if you don't have a lot of gear, you're basically stuck in this mud pool trying to get the class to get going. It was something Blizzard tried to alleviate at the beginning of Legion. You might remember they gave, say, fire mages a lot of passive crit, knowing that the spec doesn't work unless you have a lot of crit. So they try and just give it you at the start. And so over time, gear will come into play. Then they can kind of remove that and back it down. And what that means, of course, is if you haven't got gear, then you're not at the stage where they could back it down, but they've already backed it down. And then you see what I'm getting at, right? You kind of end up lost in this pool where your spec just doesn't seem to flat out work. Have I had any dramatic changes since the ranking system? Not overly, actually. Not overly. I'm finding out more about myself, and I had a great conversation with Bay from Final Boss about this, where we were looking at what makes a lot of fun. I regularly complain about the RNG that comes with my Frost Mage, right? My main character. However, if you switch to something with almost no RNG, say like a Boomkin, it's so boring to me because it doesn't have these moments of glory that I've spoke about in many videos where your class takes off and flies and does something magnificent. Those classes don't do that, and you just feel like, ugh, or at least I feel that way. Whereas many other players are like, I love that because I know what I'm putting out. I know it's down to me. I know I'm not messing with rolling the dice to see what I can get out of, and I'm quite happy to play that way. So for me, specs like that have very little to no RNG have specs that I've come to dislike the most in Legion. Joining the Boomkin in there, I would say the Ret Paladin for the most part. Like the Ret Paladin feels ultra sterile. It feels nicer when it goes super fast with Crusade, for example, but you're still kind of doing the same thing. You're still kind of walking this line that's almost a predictable amount of spells that should be pressed, and if you don't press them, then that's just a mistake. Whereas you're not adapting too much. I mean, there is some. You can obviously take some procs and stuff like that to try and mix it up. I'm not denouncing the class by any means. My favourites in terms of melee still lean heavily towards the Windwalker. And I'm always talking from fun perspective here. Windwalker, Feral, even Survival is up there now. Got to play some Survival today. And Survival, as hectic and as obvious flaws as that spec has in terms of overlapping abilities and all this stuff, it's still very fun. Certainly the most fun out of the Hunter specs for me. And remember, I'm talking about for me here, not you, right? If you love BM, all the power to you. I'm just saying that Survival is definitely up there as one of the more interesting melee specs for me to play. I've definitely found myself leaning away from the Rogue. I consider personally Outlaw to be one of the worst specs in the game. Outlaw is either fantastic or just the most frustrating mess. And the fantastic elements don't come often enough for me to really enjoy that spec. And sometimes playing it just feels like a joke has been played on me. It absolutely feels that way sometimes. So that would definitely lean towards there. And Assassination, again, I find it a little on the dull side. It works, and I'm never going to say that. But for me personally, I find that a little dull. And Sub, I need to put a few more hours in with Sub in order to come up with opinion there. I don't want to jump the gun here and say, oh, well, this is my opinion on Sub after 20 minutes or an hour of playing it. No, I need to spend a little bit more time with that. But in melee terms, Enhancement is still up there, although it definitely has its pitfalls, as many Enhancement Shamans are complaining about right now, and hopefully we'll see fixed with some recent changes on 7.2.5. But melee for me definitely leans towards Unholy DK. I still love the Unholy DK, and there's equally as many, if not more, people who love Frost, where I'd lean towards the Unholy side of things, and the Windwalker especially. The Windwalker is still my number one melee spec in Legion so far. Just tons of fun, loads to do, love the playstyle, love everything that comes with it. If we move over to the casters then, as much as I was okay with Arcane when it came to me choosing the Mage for Legion, I have definitely pulled away from that the more I've played it, as in comparison to, say, the absurdity that can happen with Fire sometimes, and the even greater absurdity that can happen with Frost sometimes. I've definitely moved away from that one as being a fan favourite. Arcane has definitely dropped down in my books. As has the Shadow Priest. It's amazing how much less interesting that spec is when you don't have Surrender to Madness. Surrender to Madness is such an interesting playstyle. For me, again, I'm talking about me personally. I love it. I love the danger. I love when you commit, you're committed, and when are you going to commit? Because the longer you leave it, the less you're going to get out of it. So you risk it a bit more, or do you go too early? And you know that when this finishes, it's game over. That is still a really wonderful, interesting style to play. As you got more and more gear on the Shadow Priest and not playing Surrender to Madness, you tend to find that you're you're just popping in and out of void form extremely quickly. So it's almost as if being out of void form is just this inconvenience. And the way the spec is supposed to be played is you're in there as much as humanly possible. You're only out for a few seconds. And that's kind of made that a little lackluster. Elemental, though. Still love Elemental. I've read some complaints about Elemental, but I don't see any of those problems. I absolutely adore playing Elemental. I have huge amounts of fun with it, and I would rate the rest of the casters below that. Although I do still very much enjoy, and I know the DPS numbers aren't there to back it up just now, Destruction and Demonology Warlock. I have great fun with those. Affliction, I don't have much fun with at all. I can't... I'll give you some perspective on that, because I know a lot of you love Affliction, is that I can't associate Drain with a nuking the boss. It doesn't feel that way to me. When I pop Drain and I've got all my UAs ticking and all that, and I've got all like Wrath of Consumptions up, and I've got my Deadwind Harvester up, and then I press Drain, it doesn't feel like I'm nuking. I'm still part of that team, and I'm sorry to say, I'm still part of that team who wants to see Shadowbolt come back and Nightfall and all that kind of stuff. I actually don't mind the UA stacking. I just can't get over the Drain aspect of it. It feels very, very slow and steady to me. But that's my own that's my own feelings on that. In terms of the best range to play, then, I'm still up there with the Ellie Shaman. I still love my mage. Have absolutely great fun on my mage. I would put... What would I put up there? I think I still would put the Shadow Priest up there because it works really well and it's interesting and it's fast-paced. It's not as good as it was, though, for me. It's not as good as it was without Serenity Madness. I miss Serenity Madness quite a lot. And when I did get to play it, like, on Botanist, people were like, you got to play Serenity on Botanist. That was a lot of fun. That was the most fun I'd had on my Shadow Priest in so long. And I was glad to see that back. In terms of healers, then, I'm still at tip-top with the Resto Shaman. That's why I chose it for our Mythic Plus study that we did a little while ago. I absolutely love the Resto Shaman, and still love it to this day, and hoping to do some Mage Tower stuff with it. And in tanking, still the Blood DK is my favourite for me. Guardian is still better than it ever was. Doesn't quite tip the scales there. I still consider the Prot Warrior to be the worst for those of you who are interested. I just cannot get into it. I've tried and tried and tried. I can't get into it in terms of being fun. Still makes me extremely sad because I have like 10 years with the Prot Warrior as a main character and just can't seem to click with this new one to enjoy it in any way. Whereas the Paladin, as simple and as simple and as lack of synergy as that spec's got, it works and it does its job, and still flying around and doing good fun with it. Did play some Brewmaster, tanked the Nighthold in the Brewmaster recently. Still very much enjoy the Brewmaster. Still some little quirks I don't like in terms of constant chain pulling. Did get a little tedious pressing Ironskin Brew so many times. It kind of felt a little redundant to keep pressing it so many times, which let it down a little bit for me. I was like, if I have to play this as a main character, But I have enjoyed Vengeance more. Vengeance Demon Hunter. I've been playing Vengeance a little bit to get, obviously, back into the mix of the specs. And Vengeance I'm actually enjoying quite a bit more than I expected to. I expected to really detest Vengeance, considering how it's designed around all sorts of abilities just mashed together. But in comparison to the other tanks, I quite enjoy it compared to them. So that's where I'm at with most of my classes. Will that change as we go into the new talents and the new setups and all that kind of good stuff? We shall see. We shall see. But there we are, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Tomb is around the corner. Good times. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.